A man has been found guilty of Memphis rapper Young Dolph. A jury of his peers deliberated for just 4 hours before finding Justin Johnson guilty. Johnson was immediately sentenced to life in prison. In testimony, co-defendant Cornelius Smith identified himself and Johnson as the two people seen on that surveillance video shooting Young Dolph.
Yvonne Newsom, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of the crime of in the first degree with a firearm and robbery with a deadly weapon. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant Michael Boatwright in this case. The defendant is guilty of first degree as charged in the indictment.
Alleged members of Chicago's O-Block gang have been convicted in the 2020 of a rapper known as FBG Duck. Duck's real name was Carlton Weekly.
It's like being a rapper has become progressively more dangerous since the 90s. For those of you who were there, you can remember that back then, it was quite rare to see more than 1 or 2 rappers being offed in a year. But now, a year where only 15 rappers are offed is considered an amazing year. It's really crazy, and that's what we'll be diving into today. We're going to look at the shocking and tragic stories behind the people who took the lives of some of the most beloved rappers in the industry. K-ers who instantly became the most hated men in the eyes of the rappers' fans. For a start, we'll be going with Takeoff from the Migos, who was gunned down in 2022.
Takeoff, 1/3 of the group Migos, is dead after a fatal shooting in Houston, Texas, according to multiple reports.
Takeoff was in Houston, chilling with Quavo and the Prince family at a birthday party. Everything was cool at first, and it should have been, considering Jay Prince and his family pretty much run Houston. Being with them is supposed to guarantee safety. But things took a dark turn when a dice game outside a bowling alley started heating up. About 40 people were standing around watching the game, but suddenly, tensions rose. Details on exactly what happened remain unclear, but out of nowhere, someone pulled out a gun and started firing. Another shooter busted back, and in the chaos, Takeoff was tragically caught in the crossfire. A nurse living nearby ran over to help, but there was nothing she could do. By the time help arrived, Takeoff was already gone. It wasn't long before the Houston PD arrested a guy named Lil Cam Fifth, though they don't think he was the one who pulled the trigger. Shortly after Lil Cam's arrest, another dude, Patrick Xavier Clark, was picked up, and now he's facing life in prison for the K-ing.
New details in the of rapper and Metro Atlanta native Takeoff. The man accused of one of the members of Migos has been indicted on charges. Police arrested Patrick Clark in December, a month after the shooting that happened. Despite there being plenty of witnesses at the scene, nobody's willing to cooperate with the police because of their street ties. But thanks to all the footage captured during the incident, a conviction still seems likely if Clark doesn't take a plea deal. Then there's the story of XXXTentacion, another rapper whose death shocked the world. X blew up practically overnight, dominating the charts and becoming a massive superstar. But on June 18, 2018, his life was brutally cut short. X had just left a bank where he withdrew $50K in cash, and he was headed to a motorcycle shop afterward. What X didn't know was that he was being followed by the men who would soon off him. A dude named Dedrick Williams had spotted X months earlier at a probation office and recognized his car. Williams, along with his homies Robert Allen, Michael Boatwright, and Trayvon Newsom, were cruising around when they saw X and decided to follow him. While X was inside the motorcycle shop, Williams and Allen went inside to buy a couple of black face masks, then went back outside to wait. When X finally came out of the store, they blocked his exit with their car. Boatwright and Newsom jumped out, ran up on X, and started punching him, trying to snatch his chain. X's uncle, who was with him, ran off and left X alone. When they couldn't get his chain off, they grabbed his Louis Vuitton bag with the $50K cash inside.
As Newsom ran back to the car, Boatwright turned around and, for no reason at all, shot X to death. After X's emder, a wild rumor started circulating that Drake had something to do with the hit. X had accused Drake of stealing his flow from the track, Look at Me, and their beef was public.
If he would have showed that he's a hospitable person and that he's really in this for the culture, rather than being taking my running off with it and then putting it on his album, then he would have got my kudos, he would have got my respect.
X even went as far as saying on Instagram Live that if he ever got offed, people should blame Drake. Adding fuel to the fire, Drake dropped the track I'm Upset, where he rapped, SMS, XXX, that's the only time I ever shoot below the neck. Why you keep on shooting if you know that in dead?
SMS, XXX, that's the only time I ever shoot below the neck.
Fans immediately thought it was a diss aimed at X. Then, after X was offed, Drake dropped Mob Ties, where he said, GLE, cause that Lambo moving fast, S-Class, G-Class, Lotta Class, in a rocket, and that B ain't got no tags, Louis bags in exchange for body bags, which only added to the rumors.
GLE, cause that Lambo moving fast, S-Class, G-Class, Lotta Class.
Despite the crazy theories, it turned out Drake had nothing to do with X's emder. Williams, Boatwright, Allen, and Newsom were all arrested and charged. Allen flipped on his homies and agreed to testify against them. There was already a mountain of evidence, and the jury found all three of the others guilty.
Trayvon Newsom, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of the crime of in the first degree with a firearm and robbery with a deadly weapon. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant Michael Boatwright in this case. The defendant is guilty of the first degree as charged in the indictment.
Boatwright, the one who pulled the trigger, even blew a kiss to X's family in court after he was sentenced to life in prison. Williams and Newsom also got life, while Allen only got 7 years, thanks to his cooperation. After the trial wrapped, Drake allegedly referenced the situation again on his track, Daylight, where he rapped, I wasn't there when they caught the body. TPS think that I bought the body. Internet swear that I bought the body. Take more than that to go pop somebody. Them ends talk about everybody. So low-key, I'm happy they got somebody.
I wasn't there when they caught the body. TPS think that I bought the body. Internet swear that I bought the body.
Next up is Pop Smoke, a rising star who jumped in the booth and quickly took over the rap game. He was on the verge of becoming one of the biggest names in hip-hop, but tragically, he didn't even have the chance to fully enjoy his success.
Billie Jean, Christian Dior.
In 2020, his life was cut short when 4 guys broke into the Airbnb he was staying at and shot him to death. Pop, who came up in the tough streets of New York, knew how to move smart in the streets, but things went sideways when he was in LA. Pop and his friend Mike D were hanging out in LA and posted some pics on Instagram showing off some gifts they received. Unfortunately, those photos also revealed the address of the Airbnb they were staying at.
Just hours before the home invasion, fans say Pop Smoke was flaunting stacks of money inside his home on social media.
His address is right there on one of his shopping bags in his house, which is this same location.
Wait. Mike and Mary. Billie Jean. Good looks, Mike and Mary. Gifts.
That's where the trouble began. In the early hours of February 19th, 2020, around 4 a.m., some dudes who had seen the post on IG broke into the house through a second-floor balcony. They went straight to the woman who was with Pop Smoke, put a gun to her head, and then headed for the bathroom where Pop was taking a shower. At first, the plan seemed to be just a robbery. Pop was ready to hand over his Rolex, but things escalated when he decided to fight back. That's when one of the robbers pulled the trigger, shooting Pop Smoke. They grabbed the Rolex, ran off, and disappeared into the night.
A rising rap star shot to death before sunrise in a Hollywood Hills home. Police say 20-year-old Bashar Jackson, who went by Pop Smoke, was gunned down when several suspects broke in to rob him.
For months, police had no solid leads, and many fans thought the emder might have been gang-related since Pop was affiliated with the Crips. But in the end, it turned out to be a robbery gone wrong. A few suspects were eventually arrested: Jaquan Murphy, Keandre Rogers, Corey Walker, and 2 minors whose names haven't been publicly released. The minors both pleaded guilty, and the one who admitted to shooting Pop is now in juvenile detention until he turns 25. The other minor got 4 years.
The 20-year-old man pleaded guilty in juvenile court on Thursday, April 6th, admitting he entered a Hollywood Hills mansion as a teenager in February 2020 with the plan to rob Pop Smoke, who ended up being shot to death by his assailant. He was sentenced to 4 years and 2 months in the secure youth treatment facility in Los Angeles, but could remain in juvenile custody until he's 25.
As for the adults involved, their trials are still pending. But in a strange twist, the case took another shocking turn in August 2023. The naked body of Javante Murphy, the brother of Jaquan Murphy, one of Pop Smoke's alleged cakers, was found stuffed in a barrel at Malibu Beach. The police think it might have been a revenge K-ing over Pop Smoke's death.
Is the killing of rapper Pop Smoke related to the recent killing of a man whose body was found in a barrel in Malibu? TMZ is reporting that 32-year-old aspiring rapper Javante Murphy. Investigators are looking into the possibility that Javante Murphy was killed in retaliation for Pop Smoke's death.
A dude named Joshua Lee Simmons was arrested for the MDR, but it's still unclear if there's any direct connection between him and Pop Smoke's case or if it was just another unrelated crime. Moving on, we've got Houdini, one of Toronto's most popular rappers, whose death in 2020 left the city in shock. Rappers who return to the hood often end up in bad situations, but Houdini's case was even more surprising. On May 26, 2020, Houdini and his friends were out shopping in a wealthy part of downtown Toronto, the kind of area where you wouldn't expect to run into serious trouble. But it turned out someone had been hunting Houdini. A shooter had been waiting for over an hour, watching Houdini from a car. As soon as Houdini walked down the street, the shooter jumped out and started firing. Houdini got hit 3 times, and though his crew fired back, the shooter managed to escape, leaving Houdini dead on the pavement. The violence didn't stop there. A month later, at a vigil for Houdini's death, more shots rang out. Someone drove by and started shooting into the crowd, and Houdini's crew shot back again. The cops found over 60 shell casings at the scene by the time the smoke cleared. Eventually, the police arrested a guy named Clay Hobbs who had driven the getaway car. Hobbs wasn't the actual shooter, but during his trial, he dropped a bombshell. He claimed that his friend Jack Lord was the one who shot Houdini. According to Hobbs, they were in the car waiting for someone to show up and buy a kilo of coke from Lord. Hobbs said Lord got paranoid when he saw Houdini and his crew, thinking they were about to rob him. That's when the shots started flying. But before police could catch up with Lord, he was offed, leaving them to believe someone else was behind Houdini's MDR. Eventually, a teenager was arrested for Houdini's K-ing and went to trial, but because he was a minor, the details haven't been made public. As for Hobbs, he got hit with a second-degree MDR conviction and is now serving a life sentence for his role in the crime. Houdini wasn't the only rapper who met a tragic end in a wealthy neighborhood. Chicago, known for its high crime rates and gang violence, has claimed the lives of countless rappers. But what happened next shocked everyone, even in a city as violent as Chicago.
I know you heard about Lil Boo, yeah. They left his out tight.
In 2020, FBG Duck, one of the most famous rappers from the city, was gunned down in broad daylight in the Gold Coast, one of the wealthiest areas of Chicago. Duck was shopping for a birthday present for his son when the attack happened. In the middle of the afternoon, 2 cars filled with shooters pulled up and unleashed over 40 shots in Duck's direction.
I knew for sure this was gunshots.
CPD would later determine someone fired those shots at Chicago rapper FBG Duck.
The Gold Coast is far from the streets where you'd expect this kind of violence, so the MDR sent shockwaves across Chicago. Duck, who was repping STL EBT, a set under the gangster Disciples, had long been involved in a deadly rivalry with the Black Disciples, specifically with the infamous O-Block crew. He was one of the most well-known GD rappers from Chicago, and his name carried weight both in music and in the streets. months. Word on the streets was that Duck had put a lot of pressure on the BDs, and rumors swirled that King Von, another Chicago rapper with strong ties to O Block, had put a bounty on Duck's head. On the day of the shooting, it's said that a BD named TZ spotted Duck while he was shopping and quickly tipped off his people. That's when 5 shooters from O Block, CM Day, Kenny Mac, Los, C-Thing, and Muwop, jumped into 2 cars and sped to the Gold Coast to carry out the hit. Another dude, Mizel Rawls, was also reportedly involved, but he took his own life before the cops could catch him. Reports suggest that after Duck was offed, King Von handed out custom O Block chains to the guys involved in the hit, solidifying their loyalty and commemorating the event. Almost immediately after the Emder, rumors spread that the BDs were behind the shooting. But it took the authorities a little while to gather enough evidence to make arrests. Eventually, everyone involved in Duck's K-ing was charged and convicted, facing life sentences for their roles in the brutal Emder.
Alleged members of Chicago's O Block gang have been convicted in the 2020 murder of a rapper known as FBG Duck. Duck's real name was Carlton Weekly.
Duck's death sent shockwaves through Chicago, especially since it took place in such an upscale, unexpected location. But what happened next was even crazier. Just a few months after Duck's death, King Von, one of the key players allegedly involved in the feud that led to Duck's Emder, was himself offed in a deadly altercation in Atlanta. Von had been beefing with NBA YoungBoy for a while, with both sides taking shots at each other on social media.
What YoungBoy talking about on this song, bro?
What?
He talking crazy on this man.
Oh, yeah?
He ain't even like that.
Oh!
On his nah.
On his
cap. You got cap in your rap.
Tensions were high, and when Von and some of his O Block crew spotted YoungBoy's affiliate, Quando Rondo, outside a hookah lounge in Atlanta, things quickly escalated. Von didn't waste any time. He ran up on Quando and started swinging, throwing punches at him in the middle of the street. But Quando's homie Lil Tim wasn't having it. He wasn't about to let Von put hands on Quando, so he pulled out a gun and opened fire. Shots rang out from both sides, and by the time the dust settled, King Von and one of his close friends were dead. Six other people were rushed to the hospital with gunshot wounds, and the entire situation made headlines. The next day, Lil Tim was arrested and charged with Von's Emder. The media blew up the story, painting Tim as the guy who offed one of Chicago's most infamous rappers.
A 22-year-old man named Timothy Leaks is reportedly facing felony murder charges in connection with the death of King Von.
Quando Rondo, feeling the heat from the media frenzy, released a song called End of Story to clear the air and explain his side of things.
Brother on the ground, gon' pick your mans up. Downright we screaming self-defense, he should've never put his hands on.
Lil Tim, meanwhile, fought the Emder charges for a few years. Then in 2023, a bombshell dropped. The charges against Lil Tim were suddenly dropped. It was a huge turn of events, and after the case was dismissed, Tim wasted no time addressing the situation himself. He dropped the track Left a Stain, where he touched on the entire situation.
On the way, we steady catching plays. I told them about my good news, I'm about to beat this case.
Next up is Lil Snoop, one of the most talented freestylers to ever step into the rap game. His written verses were fire too, but his ability to freestyle and destroy opponents in rap battles was on another level. His journey started when he hustled his way past security just to hand Meek Mill his mixtape.
I got the smoke, jam me everywhere, the Snoop name up in every coast. They say, man, that wild, you know how I come. Yeah, he from Jonesboro, I don't know where the he from, but I don't even heard of that, but that nigga got that stupid.
In a crazy twist, Meek hit him up just 20 minutes later, impressed by what he heard, and immediately wanted to sign him. After that, Meek started taking Lil Snoop to different rap battles, where he was going head-to-head with seasoned vets who had been in the game for years. Snoop was only 18, but he was taking them down left and right, leaving everyone in shock at his raw talent. After dropping his first mixtape, it was clear that Lil Snoop was on the fast track to taking over the industry. People were already calling him the next big thing, and his future looked insanely bright. But then, out of nowhere, the shocking news broke. Lil Snoop had been offed over a game of NBA 2K. The story goes that Snoop was at his homie's apartment, just playing 2K and betting money, like a lot of dudes do. According to his friend Lil E, Snoop was playing against a guy named Tony Holden. Snoop kept winning, And apparently, that didn't sit right with Holden. Instead of just walking away after losing, Holden pulled out a gun and shot Snoop twice in the chest.
Local up-and-coming rapper Lil Snoop is being laid to rest in his hometown of Jonesboro. Family and friends are still mourning the loss of the 18-year-old Darian Ross.
Holden was already out on bail when the EMDR happened, so he eventually turned himself in and got booked for EMDR, armed robbery, and illegal possession of a firearm as a convicted felon. Lil E also got hit with a manslaughter charge because of the situation, but then things got even messier. Snoop's mom came forward and claimed that Lil E, not Tony Holden, was the one who actually offed her son. In 2022, Snoop's mom went on Boss Talk 101 and laid out her version of what really happened. According to her, both Lil Snoop and Lil E went to Tony Holden's place together that day. While Snoop and Holden were gambling, Lil E was acting sketchy, clutching his gun the whole time and making Holden nervous. Holden thought Lil E was about to rob him, so he stepped away for a moment and came back with his own gun. He then kicked Lil E out of the apartment, but Snoop stayed behind. A few minutes later, Lil E returned, banging on the door with his gun. When Snoop opened the door and stepped outside, Lil E allegedly fired a shot at him. Snoop ran, but Lil E chased him down, shot him point blank, and then robbed him.
He said when he put the guy out, he closed the door. The guy came back banging on the door real loud. It sounded like he was banging with the gun. And when he walked out, the guy shot. So Snoop took off running to the left. Snoop's followed him to where Snoop was running. There was only one way out to run away. He followed him. Snoop got shot at close range, and he was also...
Snoop's mom said the bullets that offed her son matched Lil E's gun, not Tony Holden's. But despite the evidence, the cops still arrested Holden because of his criminal history. The charges against Lil E were eventually dropped, which devastated Snoop's mom, especially when she heard that Lil E allegedly offed someone else later that same year. The whole situation is heartbreaking. Lil Snoop was on the brink of stardom, only to have his life cut short over a petty argument about a video game. Then there's L.A. Capone, a rapper from Chicago who was affiliated with the Black Disciples. He was tight with some of the biggest names in the city's drill scene, like Lil Durk and King Von. But unlike many of his homies, Louisiana Capone's main focus was on making it in the music industry. His talent was undeniable, and his rise was just beginning when his life was tragically cut short.
The whole hood know me. No new nigga ain't on the block making guap trying to feed the team.
Capone's mom actually sent him to Atlanta to live with his dad for a while, hoping it would keep him out of trouble. While in Atlanta, Louisiana started making major industry connections, becoming friends with the daughters of T.I. and Lil Wayne. But tragedy struck when LA's dad passed away when he was just 12. After that, Louisiana moved back to Chicago and started repping the BDs full-time. He quickly gained buzz in the drill scene, but that also made him a target for his ops. In 2012, Louisiana Capone survived a shooting, but instead of backing down, he kept grinding and even started talking to T.I. about signing to his label. Sadly, just a year later in 2013, Louisiana Capone was leaving the studio one night when the ops caught him lacking. As he and his homie turned down an alley to get to their car, two shooters popped out and opened fire. L.A. got hit in the leg and back and was rushed to the hospital, but tragically he didn't survive. Rumors started swirling immediately about who was responsible, especially since L.A. had so many enemies in the streets. But in 2014, two men, Saki Hardy Johnson and Michael Mays, were arrested for planning the hit. They found out where L.A. was recording that night and laid in wait, ready to take him out. A third man, Miko Buchanan, was also involved. His job was to drive a second car as a distraction in case the cops rolled up. The whole thing was a cold, calculated EMDR. Chicago lost another talented artist that night, and all three men involved paid the price. Buchanan got 45 years, Mays was sentenced to 24, and Hardy Johnson was hit with 60 years, basically a life sentence.